Story 1, my roommate stole my inheritance money, so I got him arrested and now he's in jail begging me to drop charges. Been sitting on this one for a while, but I figure it's time to share. Quick background, I'm 26, work in IT, and this all went down last year. Fair warning, it's a long one. I met Jake through mutual friends at a local gaming meetup. He was 24, seemed like a cool dude, into the same games and shows as me, had a decent job at a marketing firm, and we clicked right away. At the time, I was looking for a roommate for my 2-bedroom apartment since my previous one had moved out, and Jake mentioned he needed a place. Perfect timing, right? The first few months were awesome. We'd game together after work, split chores fairly, had movie nights, and even started hitting the gym together. He always paid rent on time, kept his space clean, and was generally a great roommate. We became pretty close friends too, the kind where you can talk about real stuff, not just surface level bro chat. Then my grandmother passed away. It hit me hard. She basically raised me after my mom died when I was young. In her will, she left me $45,000. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was enough to maybe put a down payment on a house someday. I made the mistake of telling Jake about it while we were having beers one night. That's when things started changing. Jake started acting weird about money. He'd forget his wallet when we'd go out, ask to borrow cash for random things, always promising to pay back but never actually doing it. Small amounts at first, $20 here, $50 there. I didn't mind too much initially because he was my friend, you know? But then he lost his job. Said the company was downsizing, but kept insisting he'd find something soon. I let him slide on rent for a month because that's what friends do. 1 month turned into 2. He started selling his gaming stuff, saying he was trying to make rent. I felt bad for him. The red flags were there though. While claiming he couldn't pay rent, he'd come home with new clothes, order DoorDash constantly, and I'd see notifications from dating apps on his phone about premium subscriptions. But I kept making excuses for him because I didn't want to believe my friend would take advantage of me. Here's where things got really messed up. I kept my inheritance money in a separate savings account, barely touched it except to make a few small investments. One day, I logged in to check my balance and my heart nearly stopped. The account was empty. $45,000, gone. I immediately called the bank, thinking there must be some mistake. They confirmed multiple transfers had been made to another account over the past month. When they described the transfers, my stomach dropped. They'd been done from my laptop at home, during hours I was at work. Then I remembered, Jake had been borrowing my laptop a lot lately, claiming his was broken. He must have seen my password manager or something. I felt sick. This wasn't some stranger, this was my friend, someone I trusted, someone who lived in my home. I didn't confront him immediately. Instead, I went to the police with all the bank records, timestamps, and evidence. They took it seriously. Turns out financial fraud over $10,000 is a pretty big deal. I also hired a lawyer, just to make sure I was covered legally. The next few days were surreal. I acted completely normal around Jake, even while knowing what he'd done. He had no idea I knew. He was still playing the broke, job-hunting roommate, even telling me about some promising interviews while sitting there with my money in his account. The police moved fast. They tracked the transfers to his account, and one morning while Jake was eating breakfast, there was a knock at the door. The look on his face when the officers walked in, I'll never forget it. First confusion, then panic, then this weird calm like he thought he could talk his way out of it. But he couldn't. The evidence was rock solid. They arrested him right there in our kitchen, still wearing his stupid Rick and Morty pajama pants. As they were cuffing him, he kept looking at me, saying, "Come on, man, we can work this out. We're friends, right?" That's when I just said, "Friends don't steal their friends' inheritance, Jake." The aftermath was wild. After Jake got arrested, the full story came out. Turns out he hadn't been laid off at all, he'd been fired for stealing from his company too. The job interviews were actually meetings with his drug dealer. Yeah, my supposedly straight-laced roommate had a pretty expensive coke habit. He'd blown through most of my money in just a month, drugs, gambling, expensive dates with girls he met online. Classic addict behavior. The police managed to freeze about $12,000 that was left, but the rest was gone. His parents showed up at my apartment the next day. They were mortified, kept apologizing, offering to help pay it back. His mom was crying, saying this wasn't how they raised him. Turns out Jake had stolen from them too, they just hadn't pressed charges because, well, he was their son. Then the text started. Jake used his one phone call to set up some messaging system from jail, and my phone started blowing up. First, it was begging, "Please drop the charges, man, I'll pay you back, I'm looking at serious time here. I can't do this, I'm sorry, I was messed up, please help me. When that didn't work, he switched to threats. You're ruining my life over money, I know where you live, remember? My friends on the outside won't like this. I sent screenshots of everything to my lawyer and the DA. They added witness intimidation to his charges. Real smart move, Jake. His friends started reaching out too, saying I was being harsh, that he needed help, not jail. But where were they when he needed help before stealing my money? Why weren't they letting him crash at their places or lending him cash? Easy to be generous with someone else's forgiveness. The court process was pretty quick, the evidence was solid. Jake took a plea deal, 3 years in prison, plus mandatory drug counseling and restitution payments. The judge wasn't playing around, especially after seeing the witness intimidation texts. Now he writes me these long letters from prison about how he's changed, how he's getting clean, how he wants to make things right. Says he thinks about what he did every day. Good. He should. Some mutual friends say I was too harsh, that I should have worked something out privately. But nah, $45,000 isn't work it out privately money. That was my grandmother's last gift to me, meant to help start my life, not fund his drug habit. These days, I'm doing better. Got a new roommate who actually has a job and pays rent. The bank's fraud department helped me set up better security. I'll eventually get the money back through restitution, even if it takes years. Last week, Jake's mom called, asking if I'd support his early release petition. Said he's really changed, found God, all that jail conversion stuff. I told her the same thing I told him, actions have consequences, and he chose his. The lesson here? Sometimes the people closest to you can be the ones who hurt you the worst. But that doesn't mean you have to let them get away with it. Trust your gut, keep receipts, and don't let anyone guilt you into being their victim. Jake's got 2 more years to think about whether stealing from his friend was worth it. Meanwhile, I'm living my best life, drama-free. Funny how that works out. Story 2, my wife said it's just a house when I lost my job, so I let her keep it and left. Now she's desperate to sell. I've been sitting on this story for months, but it's time to share it. It's a long one, so buckle up. Looking back, I was completely blind to how toxic my marriage had become. I'm 32, she's 30, and we met at a local gym where she was a trainer. Sarah had this magnetic personality that just drew everyone in. Beautiful, confident, and always the life of the party. Unlike most of my relationships, this one moved fast. We clicked instantly, shared the same twisted sense of humor, loved the same music, could talk for hours about nothing and everything. Within a year, we were married, and I thought I had hit the jackpot. I had a great job in tech, making solid 6 figures, and she was building her personal training business. Life seemed perfect. We bought our dream house 2 years into the marriage. It was this beautiful colonial in an upscale neighborhood, 4 bedrooms, huge backyard, the works. I put down the entire down payment for my savings, but I didn't mind. I wanted to give her everything she wanted. The mortgage was steep, but with my salary, we could manage it comfortably. I handled all the major expenses, mortgage, utilities, car payments, insurance, property taxes. Sarah contributed what she could from her training income, but it was irregular and mostly went to her personal expenses. I never complained. I figured we were a team, building our future together. For the first few years, things were great. We hosted dinner parties, traveled, renovated parts of the house. Sarah had this talent for making our home look like something out of a magazine. She'd spend hours planning each room, picking out furniture, arranging everything just so. I loved seeing her so passionate about our home. But looking back, there were warning signs I ignored. Like how she'd drop thousands on furniture without discussing it first, or how she'd dismiss my concerns about our spending. You worry too much, she'd say, we're doing fine. She started referring to everything as my kitchen, my living room, my house, even though I was the one paying for it all. Then the tech industry hit a rough patch. My company started laying people off. I wasn't worried at first, I was good at my job, had seniority. But corporate restructuring doesn't care about that. When I got the news, I was stunned. 15 years of experience, multiple promotions, didn't matter. I was out. I told Sarah that night, expecting support, comfort, something. Instead, she looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted her Instagram scrolling with something trivial. Can't you just find another job? She asked, barely looking up from her phone. There are plenty of tech companies. I tried explaining that the whole industry was downsizing, that it might take time to find something comparable. We might need to tighten our belts for a while, I said. Maybe cut back on some expenses. That got her attention. She looked at me like I'd suggested selling her kidney. What do you mean, cut back? We have a lifestyle to maintain. I started listing some ideas: pause the house projects, reduce our dining out, maybe she could contribute more from her training income. She didn't like that last part. My business is finally taking off, she snapped. I'm not sacrificing that because you can't keep your job. What followed were some of the most stressful weeks of my life. I was job hunting nonstop, reaching out to contacts, doing interviews. Sarah didn't ask once how it was going. Instead, she kept spending like nothing had changed. New gym equipment for her home clients, designer workout gear, fancy organic meal prep services. One morning, I found her online shopping for a $3,000 couch. We can't afford this right now, I said. The mortgage is due next week. She rolled her eyes. It's just money. We'll figure it out. Sarah, I'm serious. We need to be careful until I find something. That's when she dropped the bomb that changed everything. It's just a house, she said, waving her hand dismissively. If we can't afford it, we'll sell it and get something cheaper. No big deal. Just a house. The home I'd worked years to buy. The down payment that took me a decade to save, the countless hours of overtime, the missed vacations, the careful budgeting, all dismissed with 3 words. Just a house. I stood there, staring at her, really seeing her for the first time. This woman, who'd spent hours making every room perfect, who'd insisted on the expensive neighborhood, who'd treated this house like her personal showcase, was now acting like it meant nothing. But it wasn't just about the house. It was about respect, partnership, understanding. In that moment, I realized she saw our marriage the same way she saw the house, something nice to have until it required real effort or sacrifice. I didn't argue. Didn't yell. I just walked to our home office and started making calls. First to my financial advisor, then to a lawyer. If she wanted to treat our life together as disposable, I'd show her exactly what that meant. Over the next few days, I moved money from our joint accounts to my personal ones, everything I'd earned and saved before marriage was legally mine anyway. I canceled joint credit cards, removed her as an authorized user on my accounts. She didn't notice at first, too busy with her clients and social media. Then her card got declined at some boutique fitness store. She called me, angry and confused. I let it go to voicemail. When she got home that night, she was furious. What's going on with the cards? I tried to buy new equipment and nothing worked. I looked up from my laptop, calm as could be. Just thought I'd help you start figuring it out, I said, using her own words. Since it's just money, right? Her face went from angry to uncertain. What are you talking about? You said we could just sell if things get tight. Seems like things are tight. So I'm making some changes. She tried backpedaling then, suddenly all sweet and concerned. Baby, I didn't mean it like that. I was just trying to help you not stress so much. We're in this together. But we weren't. We hadn't been for a long time. I'd just been too invested to see it. The next few weeks were tense. She started noticing all the financial changes. No more automatic payments for her personal trainer certification renewals. Her premium gym membership canceled. The fancy meal service stopped. She tried everything, crying, arguing, guilt-tripping. How am I supposed to run my business without proper equipment? She demanded. My clients expect a certain level of service. Not my priority, I said, echoing her indifference. It's just money, remember? Then came the mortgage due date. I didn't pay it. When she got the late notice, she freaked. What are you doing? We can't miss payments. I looked at her calmly. Why not? It's just a house. That's when it hit her, I was serious. She started crying, real tears this time. Please, we can work this out. I'll help more with the bills. I'll be more careful with spending. But I was done. I'd already found a modest apartment across town and had started moving my essential stuff when she wasn't home. I'd consulted with my lawyer, who confirmed that since I'd paid for the house entirely with pre-marriage funds and handled all payments, I had options. One morning, while she was at the gym, I left an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside were divorce papers and a note. You're right. It is just a house. And this is just a marriage. Good luck with both. I moved out that day. Blocked her number, social media, everything. She tried reaching me through friends, family, even showed up at my company's office, not knowing I didn't work there anymore. I stayed ghost. Through mutual friends, I heard she was struggling. Turns out running a luxury personal training business is tough when you have to pay your own bills. The house she'd decorated so perfectly was starting to show signs of neglect. Her fancy clients didn't want to train in a home with a dying lawn and peeling paint. 6 months later, she finally cracked. Got a message through my lawyer begging to talk. Said she'd realized how good she had it, how much she took for granted. Said she missed our life together, missed me. I agreed to meet, more out of curiosity than anything else. We met at a coffee shop. She looked different, designer workout gear replaced with regular clothes, expensive highlights grown out, that confident spark dimmed. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I was selfish and stupid. Please come home. We can fix this." I sipped my coffee, feeling nothing but mild pity. "There's nothing to fix," I said. "You showed me exactly what our marriage meant to you. It was just a house, just money, just convenience. Well, now it's just over." She started crying, mascara running. "That's not fair. I said those things without thinking. You can't throw away our marriage over a few stupid comments." "Actually, I can. And I did. Just like you were ready to throw away our home because it got inconvenient." I stood up, leaving her there crying. Outside, I felt lighter than I had in years. My new apartment might be smaller, but it's mine. I'm back working now, at a smaller company but with better culture. Started dating someone who understands partnership isn't just about the good times. Last I heard, Sarah had to list the house. Couldn't keep up with the payments on her training income alone. She's telling everyone who'll listen how I abandoned her, left her with nothing. But that's not true. I left her with exactly what she valued, just a house. The funny thing is, I'm happier now. There's peace in knowing where you stand, in not carrying someone who sees your life together as disposable. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting out. People ask if I regret being so harsh, if I could have handled it differently. Maybe. But when someone shows you how little they value what you've built together, believe them, and then build something new, something better, without them. For anyone in a similar situation, remember, a partner who treats your sacrifices as just anything, just money, just a house, just a job, will eventually treat you as just someone they used to know. Don't wait around for that day. Make it happen on your terms. Because in the end, it wasn't just a house. It was a wake-up call. And sometimes those are worth every penny. Story 3, she told me I was suffocating her, so I let her drown in her own mess. Looking back, I was probably the biggest fool in the entire dating pool. You know how they say love is blind? Well, I was straight up deaf and dumb too. I ignored every red flag, every warning sign, and every friend who tried to tell me I was being played. Classic case of a guy thinking with his heart instead of his head. I'm James, 29, and this is the story of how I watched my ex-girlfriend Sarah, 26, go from being the love of my life to a stranger who nearly destroyed everything I'd built. We met at a local brewery through mutual friends, you know, one of those casual Sunday afternoon hangouts where everyone's relaxed and just vibing. Sarah stood out immediately. Not just because she was gorgeous, which she absolutely was, but because she had this magnetic energy about her. The kind that draws everyone in. I remember she was wearing this vintage band t-shirt, ripped jeans, and had this messy bun that somehow looked perfect. She was telling this story about how she'd rescued a stray cat at her workplace, and the way she talked about it, man, I was hooked. Caring, funny, beautiful. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. Our first date was the following weekend. I took her to this hidden gem of a Thai place I'd discovered, and we ended up talking until the staff started stacking chairs. Everything clicked. She loved the same obscure movies I did, shared my weird obsession with true crime podcasts, and could quote The Office as well as I could. It felt too good to be true. Spoiler alert, it was. The first 6 months were like something out of a movie. We were that couple everyone loved to hate, always together, always laughing, posting cute pictures, the works. I introduced her to my family early on because it just felt right. My mom loved her, my sister thought she was the one, and even my dad, who's usually skeptical of everyone I date, gave me the approving nod. I'm a software developer, making pretty decent money, and Sarah was working as a marketing coordinator at a startup. She always talked about her big plans, wanting to start her own agency someday, revolutionize digital marketing, all that ambitious stuff. I ate it up. I thought I'd found someone who matched my drive. The problems started so slowly I barely noticed them. It began with small things, like her forgetting her wallet when we went out. At first, it was cute, she'd get all flustered and promise to Venmo me later. Later never came, but I didn't mind. I was making good money, and seeing her happy made me happy. Then she lost her job. The startup went under, pretty common in our city, and suddenly she was unemployed. She was devastated, naturally, and I wanted to be supportive. I told her to take her time finding the right next opportunity, that I'd help her out meanwhile. Big mistake. What started as temporary help turned into a full-time sponsorship. I covered her rent, she had her own place then, her car payments, insurance, phone bill, groceries, everything. Just until I find something perfect, she'd say. You're so amazing, babe. I don't know what I'd do without you. The thing about supporting someone is that it can slowly change them. Sarah went from being this ambitious go-getter to someone who seemed pretty comfortable letting me handle everything. Her job search became less urgent. I'm being selective, she'd say, scrolling through Instagram while I worked overtime to cover our expenses. After 8 months of this arrangement, she moved in with me. It made sense financially, I told myself. Why pay 2 rents when she was staying at my place most nights anyway? Looking back, that's when things really started to shift. She treated my house like a hotel, never cleaned, never cooked, clothes everywhere. When I'd bring it up, she'd get defensive. I'm stressed about finding work, or you're being too controlling. Classic manipulation, but I was too deep in it to see clearly. The worst part? She started going out. A lot. Like 4 or 5 nights a week. Always with her girls, always to some new club or bar. Meanwhile, I'm pulling 60-hour weeks to keep us afloat. She'd come home at 3 a.m., reeking of alcohol and other guys' cologne, then sleep until noon while I was up at 6 a.m. for work. My friends tried to warn me. My buddy Mike pulled me aside at his birthday party after Sarah had spent the whole night ignoring me and flirting with some random dudes. "James, bro, you're being played," he said. "When's the last time she even looked for a job?" I defended her, of course. Told him he didn't understand our relationship. That she was just going through a rough patch. But deep down, something started to click. The breaking point wasn't dramatic. It wasn't catching her cheating or having some huge fight. It was a random Tuesday night. I just finished a massive project at work, was exhausted but proud. I came home wanting to celebrate, maybe order some food and watch a movie together. Instead, I found Sarah all dressed up, putting on makeup in our bathroom. "Hey babe," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "I was thinking we could hang out tonight? Maybe get some takeout? Project's finally done." She didn't even look at me. "Can't tonight. The girls are doing a bar crawl downtown." "Sarah, we haven't spent an evening together in weeks." I just thought. "God, James, you're suffocating me," she snapped, finally turning to face me. "I can't be responsible for your entertainment all the time. You're so needy lately." Needy? Me. The guy who'd been bankrolling her entire life for the past year. The guy who never complained when she stayed out all night. The guy who supported her dreams while she did absolutely nothing to achieve them. Something in me just snapped. Not in an angry way. More like a switch flipping off. I felt this weird calm wash over me. "You're right," I said quietly. "I won't suffocate you anymore." She rolled her eyes and went back to her makeup. She had no idea what was coming. That night, while she was out partying, I made some calls. Cancelled her phone plan. Removed her from my credit cards. Called my bank to stop any automatic payments going to her accounts. Then I started packing her things. When she stumbled home at 2 a.m., I was sitting in the living room, calm as could be. "We're done," I said simply. "What?" She laughed, thinking I was joking. "I'm done supporting someone who treats me like an ATM. You have until the end of the week to find somewhere else to live." The crying started immediately. The promises, the apologies, the manipulation, all of it. But I was immune now. I'd seen behind the curtain, and I couldn't unsee it. "But I love you," she sobbed. "Where am I supposed to go? Not my problem anymore. You said I was suffocating you, so I'm giving you space. All the space in the world." The next few days were hell. She alternated between crying, screaming, and trying to seduce me back. But I stayed firm. Her friends called me an asshole. Her sister showed up to yell at me. I didn't care. By Friday, she was gone, moved back in with her parents. But the story doesn't end there. 2 months later, reality hit her hard. No job, no money, no credit, and her parents weren't nearly as lenient as I had been. She started calling, texting, showing up at my office. "I've changed," she'd cry. "I realize what I lost. Please give me another chance." But I'd moved on. Started focusing on myself again. Hit the gym, reconnected with friends, got that promotion I'd been working toward. My life was better without her in it. The last I heard, she's working as a waitress, still living with her parents, watching my success through social media. Sometimes she drunk texts me at 2 a.m., telling me she misses us. I never respond. 6 months after Sarah moved out, I met Claire at a work conference. She's brilliant, ambitious, and actually has her shit together. When I told her about Sarah, she was shocked. "How could anyone take advantage of you like that?" she asked. I just shrugged. Sometimes you have to let people drown to realize you were never their lifeguard in the first place. Claire and I have been together for a year now. We split everything 50-50, support each other's careers, and actually enjoy spending time together. She's never once made me feel like I'm suffocating her by wanting to spend time together. Yesterday, I saw Sarah at a coffee shop. She tried to wave me over, but I just walked past. Claire squeezed my hand and smiled. No words needed. Some people say I was cruel for cutting Sarah off so suddenly. Maybe I was. But sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their own actions. She said I was suffocating her? Well, now she can breathe all she wants, in her parents' basement. The lesson here? When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And if they tell you you're suffocating them, do them a favor and let them drown.